Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland. This video is about Donald Trump and wishful thinking. Well, Donald Trump is delusional about so many things. Obviously, saying that he's made billions of dollars when, of course, he's been bankrupt so many times. Saying he made his fortune with a small loan of $1 million in the 60s. Small, $1 million is not small, certainly wasn't small in the 60s. And omitting the fact he inherited $400 million in the 70s, and on, that he's a genius, that if he'd been in the military, he could have reached the top of the military. Obviously, he's got no self-discipline, he's not remotely athletic, he's got no moral or physical courage. I have none of these things either, but I don't pretend to have them. But that's not always serious. Well, when it comes to Iran, it is deadly serious. It'll have real repercussions. So the intelligence chiefs have told President Trump that Iran is not developing nuclear weapons. The Iranians have been saying this for almost 30 years. And for almost 30 years, Israel and her allies have been accusing the Islamic Republic of Iran of attempting to develop nuclear arms. The first part of this tale is always overlooked. When did Iran really begin its nuclear weapons program? That was in the 70s under the Shah of Iran, who was, of course, America's best buddy in the region. But that's a little bit inconvenient, so we'll forget that bit. So Donald Trump told his intelligence chiefs to go back to school. He had no reason to disbelieve him. Well, I feel it's not true. Odd how one of his cheerleaders is Mr. Shapiro. Facts don't care about your feelings. Come on, President Trump, what's your evidence that Iran is attempting to develop nuclear arms? The same conclusion has been reached 11 times. Look at the International Atomic Energy Authority. And that's as authoritative a body as can possibly be on this issue. And they have reached the same conclusion. So expert opinion is virtually unanimous. So President Trump, he slams the horrible deal with Iran. And his reasons for saying that that was a bad deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, are really little or nothing to do with nuclear weapons. To do with other Iranian actions, well, that plan only concerns nuclear weapons. It doesn't concern other issues. The Iranians are honouring the deal, whereas the United States has ripped it up. And by the way, I wouldn't object if the Iranians did develop nuclear weapons. They're not obliged to honour the deal. If America is not going to abide by it, neither should Iran, all right? The United States has not upheld its end of the bargain. Therefore, Iran is absolved of any duty to abide by that agreement because they're getting nothing in return for it. He said that Iran is a vicious country. Now, the Iranian government is often bad to its own people, and torture does go on there. It's quite true. Talking about torture there. Torture goes on in many countries, particularly Saudi Arabia. And of course, President Trump is bosom buddies with the Saudi Arabians. He never says a word against the abuse of their own people, of virtual slavery in Saudi Arabia, of beheadings for crimes which are not even crimes in most of the world. Things like sorcery. I mean, do Saudi Arabian witches fly around on broomsticks like ours used to? Or apostasy, and on and on. So one of the most oppressive countries in the world, but Trump loves the Saudi Arabian elite because they give him money. And that's what it's all about, money, not morality. So it really is nauseating to castigate the Iranians whilst cozying up to a government which does much worse. Anyway, Trump says he doesn't have to agree with what his intelligence head honchos are telling him. Well, I suppose he's right. I mean, you don't have to agree that gravity exists. You don't have to agree that 2 and 2 makes 4. You don't have to agree that, humans need oxygen to live. All right? You can believe what you want, but you'd still be dead wrong. All right? You don't have to agree that some people are men and some people are women. So, yes, you can deny reality. It is possible to do so, but you are still incorrect in what you say. So we don't have to respect him for this absolute drivel which he is broadcasting. So it's about truth. It's not really a matter of opinion, and they study the evidence and come up with the objective assessment that Iran is not essaying to develop nuclear arms. So Israel produced documents that there was an Iranian nuclear weapons program. These were stolen documents dating back to before the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was signed. Now, I can't verify the authenticity of these documents. I can't read Persian or anything like that. And by the way, isn't hacking computers and so on, isn't that grossly immoral and illegal according to the United States? Except when Israel does it. Oh, well, that's a different matter. So President Trump on intelligence saying, well, the intelligence agency said there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Well, obviously there were in 1991. the Iraqis declared their inventory and failed to destroy them in a verifiable manner, which they're required to do so by the ceasefire agreement, and blah, 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 and kept hinting that they had them. And indeed, a few WMD items were actually found after 2003, a very few, which nevertheless proves the point. There was some evidence that there was WMD there. There was some evidence that there wasn't. And so it was a mixed picture. But obviously for the Bush administration, that wasn't good enough. It had to be a slam dunk. They had to exaggerate the evidence that supported the case they wished to make. They had to negate and deny the evidence which they found inconvenient. And it was really the political manipulation of intelligence, not the intelligence itself, that was a problem there. And intelligence is just that. It's rarely 100% certain. We're often talking about impossibility and probability, not things which are absolutely sure. So, and if the Bush administration was so dreadful for what it did with regard to Iraq in 2003, why on earth is John Bolton the National Security Advisor? Bolton, who was the architect of the Iraq War more so than almost anybody else. So if he really does loathe the Bush administration for that, he should not touch John Bolton with a 10-foot barge pole. So, Trump deprecates his intelligence experts, saying their intelligence said that Iran is wonderful. Well, they never said anything of that. They didn't come to a judgment about whether its government is delightful or detestable. They simply stated the almost incontestable fact that Iran is abiding by the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, and America doesn't make the least pretense to honor its solemn promises given to the international community. So, as Steve Schwartz said, the Iranians have got the moral high ground because they have honored their promises, whereas America has reneged on them. Who would trust America again? Why should the North Koreans do anything that America wants? Because we know that Trump can just throw a tantrum and shred that agreement at any moment. They can't trust the Americans. So Trump will believe what he wants to believe, and he'll disbelieve what he wants to believe. If something's attractive, it's true. If it's unattractive, then it's untrue. And I come across this infantile attitude oh so often, right? It is self-delusion. I remember reading Ben McIntyre's books. He's this British journalist, writes a lot about intelligence matters, espionage, and so on, and failures of German military intelligence in the Second World War. And he said probably a crucial flaw was want to believe ability. Simply believing things because they wanted to believe them, and disbelieving things that they found unpalatable. And that is just infantile. The very beginning of maturity and objectivity is assessing the evidence in a neutral and unemotional manner. You're on a quest for truth, and you've got to find the truth, whether it's attractive or unattractive, doesn't matter. You try to find the truth. That's what it is. But obviously Trump is effectively not an adult, and that's why he just makes up numbers about how much money they made from Saudi Arabians, billions, and this billions and 4 billions or 14 billion or 40 billion. I can't remember exactly how he was doing it, but it really was like that. So, this is yet another one of these flagrant fallacies, and there was such a farrago of lies in his State of the Union address the other day. Things like Mexico will pay for the wall. We don't hear that one anymore. Or that Barack Obama was not born in the United States. Or that, that there's no global warming or things like that. Well, on and on and on. So there we are. So, and Trump wants off that investigation shut down. I wonder why he's so frightened. He obviously knows what they might find. Saying it's ridiculously partisan, there can be no legislation on this investigation on. There have been scores of investigations down the decades in the United States of top political figures, and there's always been legislation going on. This goes back to, say, Andrew Johnson, or was it Calvin Coolidge as well, and Nixon. There was legislation during all these times. So there's no reason why laws shouldn't be passed now, but he's having to threaten them because that's how he deals in threats, not obviously justice or logic. So he's obviously scared because he knows he must be guilty of something very terrible, and several of his associates have already been sent to the slammer, and he may well be joining them and getting accommodation at federal expense. So that is that. Trumpism, and much of the Republican Party, is really about the denial of objective truth, and that is truly worrying.